There we go. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nitzan Mosery. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. It's going to be a great evening of a lot of information. So I hope you guys brought a pen and a pad of paper to write on, because the knowledge that this gentleman that I brought on today is going to share with us is incredible. You know, it talks. You want to partner up with people who have been in this industry a lot longer than you, who have a lot more knowledge and a lot more oomph than what you have. And my partner and friend, Biff Ramsey, he comes to us 25 years in the asset management, regional management world. He's managed portfolios for groups like Blackstone, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Goldman Sachs. These are billion-dollar portfolios, and he's taken parts of that portfolios and he's gone and he's helped manage them and run them through full cycles. He's gone full cycle on over 25, correct me if I'm wrong, about 20,000 unique units in his career, which is a lot more than I think a lot of us here put together have had in our current portfolio put together. And he's going to talk to us tonight about asset management. You know, we hear a lot of people talking about asset management, and it's this kind of thing that nobody really understands and talks about, and we think we know, but we really don't. It's the sauce, it's the cream on top of the cake that really helps ownership ride the wave of ownership through our holding period. So without further ado, I want to Biff, thank you so much for being here with us. For taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you know you're out there, you're asset managing our portfolio together as a partnership. You've got a lot more going on. So again, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, it's truly a pleasure. You're too kind, but yeah, have been around the block once or twice here in the multifamily space. So thrilled to be here. You all look wonderful on my cubes, on my avatars on my screen, and can't wait to hopefully share some tidbits and some wisdom, but more interested in speaking to y'all and answering questions and wanting to understand where we're at and where we're going, and be part of that with y'all. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And folks, you know, as Biff and I, we're going to have a conversation back and forth. I'll be asking him questions. It'll be like an interview session here. You have any questions, you can raise your hand, you can type them in the chat. We'll get to it. You know, you don't have to wait till the end. This is something that we're going to be interactive with you guys. This is something that we're putting together so that you guys can learn from it. We can share knowledge and wisdom as well. So with that being said, so Biff, asset management, explain to us a little bit, right, the difference between property management and then asset management. A lot of people seem to think it's one and the same.
Sure. Yeah, you have to think of the asset manager as the liaison between the ownership, the sponsor team, the money, the lender, everyone involved in the true ownership and the equity, the capital stack of the asset, and the actual boots on the ground, property management team. Every operation is different. Every business plan is different. Every ownership group is different. Every management company, third party manager, there's a million ways to structure your operations. But typically, you need somebody who is the go-between. You need somebody who understands really both sides, who speaks the language of both sides. Owners and lenders and equity guys are typically busy. They're typically focused on acquisitions or lending or providing equity. They don't want to be involved, frankly, in air quotes day-to-day operations, to perform on these assets and to perform a business plan. And typically the management company, the boots on the ground property managers, their charge and their expertise is the physical sticks and bricks of the asset and running the teams and running maintenance and customer service. And they're not owners. They're not finance people. They don't understand some of the things that it takes to own and operate an asset. So there has to be a go-between. There has to be a liaison, somebody that understands tact and what it takes to get, frankly, to get both sides to bend a little bit toward the fruition and the completion of a business plan. So that's who the asset manager is.
Fantastic. And okay, so let me ask you this now. So we're putting a property under contract. We're talking to the to the property manager. We're getting all that done. When do we engage asset management? Where in the game plan do they fall in?
It's a great question. In the very beginning, which is probably not what one might think. The asset management can be involved in every phase of a deal life cycle. And I guess maybe to step back for a second, just so everyone is kind of reading off the same sheet of music, the deal life cycle is the pre-development or the underwriting or the pre-acquisition phase. Everything from reviewing a deal, underwriting a deal, due diligence, everything that happens before the closing table. That's one phase. Then you have a post-closing pre-stabilization. Maybe it's a lease up if it's a renovation or a new construction. If it's an acquisition, you still have a stabilization period where you're going from a previous ownership regime to your new ownership regime, and you have to stabilize something, even if it's just minor things. And then you have post-stabilization. That can include permanent financing, completion of business plan, cash flowing, all those fun things. Once we've stabilized and permed out and patted ourselves on the back. And then the final phase of a deal life cycle is the dispossession. At some point, theoretically, you're going to sell this asset. You're going to have to prep it, prop it up. Maybe there's work to be done. Maybe there's you're repositioning in the rent roll. Expense management. There's a laundry list of things that may be necessary to undertake in order to get prepared and ready for a sale at max value. So back to the beginning and answer your question, Nitsan, asset management should be involved in the very beginning. We're going to help you in your underwriting. We're going to help you in your due diligence. We know what expenses should be. We're experts at market analysis. There's every opportunity in your first phase, let alone every phase of your deal cycle, to involve your asset manager. And again, it depends. It depends if you're contracting this person out. Maybe you have to pick your battles, and maybe you're capable of doing your own diligence and underwriting, and that's fine. Every deal is different, every structure is different. But if you're truly kind of using all of your tools, someone who is experienced in operations, market analysis, understands expenses, understands leasing, et cetera, is going to help you in every phase, including the first phase of diligence and underwriting.
Do you guys work when we're putting a property under contract or when we're evaluating an asset? And we usually talk to our property management company and get their input on expenses and income and whatnot. How do you work with the property management company to help create that budget, that pro forma?
I think tact is that word. I think I already used it, and I'll probably hear me use it a few more times because it's my job to take the targets that the ownership group intends to hit, which can be unrealistic. They can be stiff, they can be lofty. Insert what are those adjectives? But generally, a property management team gets handed a bunch of targets from an ownership underwriting, and they may not like them. They may think they're unrealistic, and it's my job. It's the asset manager's job to really support both sides and help the property management boots on the ground team understand that they're going to have resources from ownership. That here's why we think that rents could achieve a certain level, or here's why our analysis of the market is showing this rent level or these expenses or this marketing angle or whatever the case may be, and maybe the manager is going to go into it maybe not quite so apprehensive about these lofty targets that ownership has handed to them, and vice versa. Ownership has expectations. They've promised their investors return metrics based on rents and market analysis, rents and expenses. And so if they don't feel comfortable that their management company is on board and that their management company feels that these are achievable results, you know, it's hard to start off a deal. You know, if both sides, ownership and management, aren't comfortable with each other, comfortable with the business plan, understand the targets, understand the expectations. I think expectation management is probably something we need to hit, you know, multiple times in this conversation. You know, ownership is setting expectations with management via those targets, but also management via their feedback is managing expectations with ownership, and it's my job to be in the middle of all those conversations and speaking the language to the ownership team and the lending team and the equity team, but also speaking the language to the management team and making sure everybody's in lockstep and we're, you know, one heartbeat, one goal, you know, onward toward achieving that business plan.
Right. So you're literally the middleman, the middle person in between ownership, the lenders, you know, and the management company, right? So there's an asset manager, then there's a regional manager, there's a property manager, right? These are all the different quote unquote managers that we have to work with. This is a big theater, a big cast of actors that we have to play with, right? And we have to control and manage it, like you said, manage the expectations of the
Well, and
of the ownership team. Go ahead.
it's people too. It's
Hmm.
it's you know, I'll say the word again, tact. That may be our word of the day. If that pops up on a quiz later, you know, you have to read the room. You have to know if you're working with an ownership group. You know, Nissan's ownership group maybe they may have a certain personality. They may be firm on certain targets or touch points that are non-negotiable. You know, you may work with a third party management group that's a great manager and they have a great track record and they're great performers, but they stand firm on certain payroll expenses. I mean, I'm totally making up examples here, but you know, knowing those nuances and reading the room and being able to speak to both sides and getting everybody again, you know, on the same page, working toward the same goal, rowing in the same direction. That is ultimately the job.
Right. I know that when we get on our property calls and you're the one heading or leading the call, right? I know there's always, you know, yourself and Kat or, you know, you know the questions that I'm going to ask already in advance because we've worked together for so long and you can already plan for that, right? You go, okay, so Neat's on here. These are the questions that you're going to ask and these are the answers that you're looking for because you know me already, you know what we're going to ask, right? So you're
Sure.
hitting on those points.
And there's a degree of it too, is that, you know, I'm the mouthpiece. I'm the talking head, and that's by design because you may have a property manager on the property, for example, that we need to mine him or her for information. We need to know the feel of what's the traffic saying, what's the market feedback, you know, on the ground, you know, because maybe we're considering reducing rents or giving concessions or raising rents, you know, or maybe we have a customer service issue and we're really drilling down on a, you know, a property manager trying to get the, you know, because that information that she holds from her daily interactions is crucial to our decision making, but maybe she's intimidated by the suits, right? You know, and no, I hope nobody in here takes offense by me saying that, but you get what I'm saying. She's not going to give the suits on the ownership team or the lending team or the equity team the same answer that she's going to give me, who she has a rapport with and who speaks the language and who was literally in her position at, you know, one point earlier in my career. So it's you kind of earn um, a little more trust, a little more. You're able to get a little more info out of them and create a little more of a friendly atmosphere, even though we're all managing multi tens of millions of dollars of assets here, hundreds of millions and, you know, portfolios, et cetera. But you have to kind of create an atmosphere where we can ask questions and we can get real answers or we can have difficult conversations. You know, that's another part of the tack too, is if things aren't going well, for example, bad news has to be delivered in the form of, hey, fix it or you have a problem. You know, there's an art to you know, correcting a management company, a manager, an expense line item, you know, whatever the course corrective action may be. There's an art to doing that where people hear you, they understand what's being dictated, but they also are motivated to fix it. You know, that same conversation can be mishandled or misrepresented, and you can have somebody who doesn't want to work for you anymore, who isn't motivated to, fix these payroll expenses or whatever the example may be. So there's kind of an art to, um, kind of choreographing the back and forth, whether it's good news, bad news, or just mining for information day to day, call to call, week to week, month to month.
Absolutely. And as ownership, we, I know that it's important for me also to maintain the chain of command. Right. So, and what do I mean by that? Right. When we're on our management calls, you're the person that's talking. You're the person that's leading the conversation. Right? Yes, we're the ownership team, right? You're the asset manager. We're not going to overstep you and start bounding and going in. It's important to maintain that chain of command so that there's the respect, so that when you do go out to the team after the calls, behind the scenes, they can confide in you. They can talk to you. You can also tell them, listen, ownership said this is what we need, this is what's going on. So for those of you listening, it's crucial to keep that chain of command in place when you've got your asset manager on the call. All right, let's talk about this. Key metrics as an asset manager. Do they differ from a property manager? Are they the same? What kind of metrics are you working as an asset manager on the property? Are you diving deep into the weeds as a property manager, or are you taking it on a higher, 30,000-foot level?
It's a great question and probably a great distinction. And the answer is it depends, right? But let's flesh that out a little bit. Establishing your asset management strategy in the beginning of your acquisition or your development, meaning are you going to strap on asset management? Is it internal? I mean, however you kind of absorb that role, you let's say, for example, it's not going well. We're in a lease up and we're not getting the leases. NOI is down. The timeline is ticking. Investors aren't happy. What's going to happen is ownership and asset management is going to have to come together and decide that, hey, pro forma is not tracking favorably. Monthly financials, but NOI, et cetera, are not tracking to pro forma. That's not favorable. We're not in good shape. But what we need to do is we need to triage this. We need to make a plan to get right on property, to fix what needs to be fixed, and then set a course toward growing back up toward pro forma, toward fixing it. And so maybe that's a conversation that happens between ownership, lender, equity, and asset management. But maybe to the property, they haven't done anything wrong. Maybe it's a market function. Maybe there was construction issues. I mean, there's a dozen reasons why there's no blame to be assigned on your property manager, your property third party property management partner. So maybe the conversation between asset management and property management leadership and site level management is, hey, we're going to set a budget. Don't worry that it's not pro forma budget today. We're asking you to hit X top line. We're asking you to manage expenses down to this level, and we're asking you to hit this this reforecasted budgeted NOI. That's victory for you, Q1. That's victory for you, Q2. This is this aggregate is victory for you, 2024. All as an example, but in that example, maybe that budgeted NOI is still a shortfall to the pro forma NOI because of the market conditions or construction delays or lease up delays or whatever. So you see what I'm saying? It's as a group and as a team, ownership, lending, equity, asset management, whoever's involved in the equation, you just have to work through it, and you have to use the asset manager as a tool, because that's what it is. In that same example, if you didn't have the tactful layer in between there, and you've got suit owners who are throwing shade and blame onto your little third party property management operation, they may crack out on you and quit. And do you think that your shortfall to pro forma is going to be better if you force your manager to blow up on you and quit? I don't. There's always keeping people happy, keeping people motivated, keeping people working toward a goal, even if that goal has fallen short of pro forma in this example. That's kind of how I would answer that. I know I got pretty specific in my example, but
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, absolutely. Can you describe a scenario where you were just talking about market conditions and so forth, where you kind of had to pivot strategies, where you really had to,
Sure.
throw the baby and the bathwater out at the same time?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, and maybe to use a little bit different example, so we're kind of touching as many points as possible. I mentioned the deal cycle. We'll keep reminding everybody you have your pre-acquisition or pre-development, post delivery, post acquisition, pre-stabilization. Then you have your post-stabilization, permanent financing, all that good stuff. But then we're going to sell. Now we're dispossessing this asset. We're moving toward a closing table. Hopefully valuation's there, but valuation's not there. What do we do? And what you do is you have a triage, you have a round table, and you sit down with ownership and maybe even involve management. Maybe that's one of those things where everybody sits around and they go, hey, we need to make some tough decisions. We have to fix this expense. We have to hybridize these payroll slots, or these on-site employee slots. Maybe we have to drop a vendor and take something on in-house. I mean, there's a litany of rhymes and reasons that you may have to do in order to get prepared for dispossession. Maybe it's just pushing rents to a certain level. Maybe you're a calendar year away from that dispossession timeline, and you're performing well, and expenses are well managed, and the operation is kind of efficient. But you're looking at your rent and you're going, we need 5%. We need 5% rent growth in this next year, and we're there. So maybe it's not even that the thing's on fire and you have to cut and change and get creative. Maybe you just have to set expectations with management for a moderate rent growth, and you just have to do everything in your power to remember every day, every week, every month that slow and steady, moderate rent growth is all we need to get to this closing table with full valuation. I hope I didn't jump around too much, but preparing for a dispossession is really its own animal, and it's 100% analysis. Everybody, all stakeholders have to sit down at a table and have a good, hard, honest look at who we are and where we are in time and space. What is our value, and what do we need to do to change it to get what we want? And if we're not capable of having that honest conversation with ourselves, well, nothing's going to change. So that's probably
Love it.
that's probably a good answer to stabilization is really no different. I mean, obviously you're not trading, you're not closing and selling off the asset, but when you're trying to get stabilized, the fundamentals are very similar. Maybe you're in a lease up, for example, and it's not going well. You got to sit around the table and go, hey guys, I don't care what the pro forma was, or I don't care what we thought these market conditions were going to be. We're not getting what we need. Is it a traffic problem? Is it the marketing that's creating a traffic problem? Is it a closing problem? Is it a team, people problem? Is it a product problem? Are we not showcasing our product? I mean, the classic questions you ask yourself when you're not getting the leasing volume and productivity that you want, or that you projected. You have to ask: Is it me? Is it the product? Is it you? Is it the market? So just another example in the cycle of how sitting down and having a good hard look in the mirror as a team, and agreeing on kind of a pivot and a recalibration forward. If you can't do that, if you're not capable of doing that, you're going to suffer the same consequences.
How often do you speak to the on-site team?
Good question, because it depends. But it's reading the room, right? It's understanding if you
So what you're saying, I'm sorry,
one
to interrupt, but what you're saying is that there's no set rule, right? You
no,
have to flow and see what is happening on the property, what is happening with the team, and go
yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I've dealt with managers in my career, and each of you has dealt with an individual in your life or in your professional career where less is more. That less touch points is actually a net positive in your relationship, right? And now if the thing's on fire and we have problems, and it needs to be an oversight needs to be extra, then I'm going to be all over you like white on rice. It's a dance between necessity and tact. I was just going to say, Nitan, we own a property in our portfolio, and the manager's great. She does her thing. She's experienced. But every time we get on the phone with her, she's just like, yeah, it's great. No delinquency, 100% pre-lease. Like, what, kind of, she doesn't understand that we're used to much more of a fight, much more of, delinquencies and leasing turmoil and having to work through some, an expense issue or whatever, the litany of problems that an ownership operation could face. And you get on with her and she's like, kind of like, why are y'all calling? I know I have to be here, but it's just funny because we all kind of chuckle. um, but that's the example. Is I wouldn't bother her. I'm not going to call her 3 times in 1 week
Right.
for no reason, because she literally will go, hey man, why are you calling me? Is my job in jeopardy? And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, you're doing a great job. Let's talk next week. You let me know how you're doing. And versus, if you have a property that's in serious distress, and you're not happy with team members, or management leadership, or leasing is on fire, or any of those kind of negative data points, you're going to be all over them. You're going to be finding ways to hopefully have good conversations with them. Maybe it's, maybe they're tough conversations. Maybe it's, I've even gone as far, and I don't, this is kind of a personality thing. I think all managers are different in this regard. I've even snuck up on them before. I've even driven to a market unannounced and, hey, how's everybody doing? I mean, I've done that before, man, because I never do that, because that's kind of my last resort. I did that one time, I mean, I guess it's been a few years now, but not eons ago. Showed up, unannounced. Everybody has that look on their face. I didn't say 2 words. I just worked in that office that day and was kind of chipper, but I didn't tell them I was coming, and they all knew exactly what that meant. And actually had one of the people that we were questioning their validity, is how I'll say it nicely. She quit about 2 weeks later. I didn't have to say 2 words. So it knowing your team, knowing your asset, knowing the space, being able to read the room. Again, if it needs full attention, it needs full attention. But certainly, if it doesn't, you don't want to be overbearing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've surprised my property managers many, many times, just to keep them on their toes and make sure that they're running. And that property that you mentioned with that on-site manager, I love those calls. They're less than 5 minutes, right? And those are the calls that you want to have, right? You want them to be quick, easy. Things are great, no delinquency, 100%. People are paying. It's fantastic. Have a nice day. So absolutely, reading the room and getting to know the people on site and what's going on um, helps with the flow. So let me ask you this: what what have been, as an asset manager, and I know you've also held the role as a regional manager as well, what have been some of the most valuable lessons you've learned in your career? And I think I'm putting you on the spot here. But what are some lessons that you've learned?
That's a good question. I probably, being a little more naturally skeptical. I probably am. I have learned in my career to be more skeptical. And that doesn't mean that you just distrust everybody, and you're unpleasant to work with. It just means um, I am naturally, personally, a little more of a. I think there's names for these types of personalities, but I'm a little more of like, I'm easy to be friends with, but once you break that, we're done. I'm one of those type of people. But whereas I think I have learned to kind of be the opposite, where you kind of have to earn my trust. Just dealing with shady vendors and people on teams that weren't there for the team, and some of the things. Um, I think when I was younger, I probably held on a little too long to some of those, and trying for the right reasons, wanting to save people, and wanting to give people chances, and it's personal. Each of you has your own personality, each of you has your own management style, whether you know it or not. And so my advice in this question would be to be who you are and lean into that style, and maximize who you are, but also know your blind spots too. And especially early in my career, one of my blind spots was just I gave too many chances, to wasn't skeptical enough in the right situation. It's served me well, because I've always been a motivator. I've always been a lead by example type. I'm just not naturally a doom and gloom, my way or the highway. I'm just not that type of person. Some people are. Some people are great at it. That's some people's style, and if that's yours, you should lean into it, and learn how that works best for you. But because of my style being a little more of a motivator, I had to learn how to cut the cord.
I appreciate that. And, who have been some of your mentors or role models in in the industry, in the asset management industry, because we hear a lot about these multifamily gurus and everybody's on stage and whatnot, but the people behind the scenes, right? Who we don't hear a lot about them. Who are some people that have helped you along the way, taught you, taken you by the hand, shown you the asset management, regional management world?
Yeah, that's probably another good question. I don't know that I have a name or an individual. I had a my I was with my first development company for almost 14 years, so I grew up with them, and it was a small shop. I mean, we were, I wound up at, I worked my way up I mean, literally my first summer before I even knew I wanted to be in this industry. I painted curbs, I fixed toilets, and I did a little bit of campus marketing. That and for $8 an hour. That's how I started in this industry. Um, and then, 14 years later, I'm, at the leadership table, a table of three individuals at a multi, $500 million company, small shop. I mean, there's not 25 people in the whole building. So, just fortunate to see in that paradigm, it's a lot of wearing many hats, do what it takes. That whole kind of bootstrap mentality. Play like big boys, but we have the personality and the of just a small shop. The um, kind of everything that comes with being real people in a small environment. So I just learned a lot in that. And then I guess I say all that to say that then flash forward, I spent another multiple years with Landmark, who is a brand name in the multifamily and student
Huge.
space that
They're
everybody's
huge.
probably at least heard. Yeah, they're the biggest developer, number one in the student space. I mean, 2 billion in their pipeline at any given time. Massive equity partners, major equity of the world is clamoring to work with these guys and gals. Couldn't be more polar opposites. Even though, funny story, they actually started in the same. Their headquarters in Athens, Georgia, were shared a parking lot. They were literally across the parking lot for each other for a lot of years. Started very similar, but kind of took different trajectories, which is its own conversation. But anyway, so I was with them for a number of years after that too, and it was a similar vibe in the personality and personable people. I mean, a roster full of great people, but I mean, this is the big, beautiful machine. I mean, this is silos of departments that are totally built out, departments I didn't even know existed. Whereas I used to do all of that. I used to do most of that. I used to do most of it. You know what I'm saying? It just was very enlightening, the different ways that this can be done. Each of you, I'm sure you have ambition. You probably have partners. You probably have tried and failed at something. You're probably into a new venture. Maybe you've had some success. I mean, wherever you are in the spectrum, it's not wrong. It's probably not 100% right yet. You're probably still trying to figure it out. So I think, to answer your question and wrap it up, it wasn't maybe a person. It was more just seeing two major shops and how they operated totally opposite and with totally different sizes and personalities and how that works. But have taken many of those lessons, how to be a real person and how to deal with people, how to be a small, have a small shop mentality. But I've been an integral part of the biggest, most beautiful machine that there is. Right. I know what it takes to have a big, beautiful machine in the biggest space with the biggest equity checks and the biggest development pipelines. I mean, I've stood there and watched it. So just kind of being able to see and to process and to thrive and to take um, little tidbits from each of those has been probably the answer to your question.
Great, thank you. So Biff, people are listening, people are getting started in multifamily, people are in multifamily. We got, people that are in property management and so forth. What would be your advice to them on hiring an asset manager or becoming an asset manager? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that they should look for when transitioning or working in or becoming an asset manager, working with an asset manager?
Let's split that up because I think there's a lot in that. Let's start with if you don't have an asset manager type or an operations specialist type in your organization and you need one, number one, you do need one. I don't, again, every operation is different. You could be, one person, and you're just trying to grow your couple doors into many hundreds and many thousands of doors. It just depends where you are. But if you're to the point where your operation is big enough that you need someone with operational expertise, you should find just that. You should find somebody that's been there, that's been on properties, that's dealt with teams, that's dealt with vendors, that's dealt with leasing. There's really just no substitute for that. Um, but it's also a function of cost, right? I mean, if you don't solve for that in your organization, um, you don't need to. Just like any cost. I mean, just like CPA, just like cost of capital. I mean, as you're building your business, I mean, you probably adding an operational piece sooner in your growth cycle than later is going to be helpful, because that's such a um, that individual or that department is going to touch so many aspects. Kind of back to that deal cycle, right? The operations team is going to be helpful in your pre-phase, in your development phase, or your acquisition phase, your underwriting phase. That team is going to be vital. I mean, that team is going to be everything in your post-delivery, post-acquisition, pre-stabilization phase. You're going to need that team after stabilization, and you're certainly going to need that team as you get ready to get to a closing table and a dispossession. So, um, yeah, I can't speak to your budget. I can't speak to where you are in your business life cycle, but if you don't have somebody who's got operational experience, I highly recommend finding one. Now, if you want to become that person, maybe that's how I'll split this up. There's no substitute for experience. You probably know more than you think you do. My hypothesis is probably that if you're on this call, you're in this network somehow, some way, for some reason. Whether you're just interested and you literally have zero know-how or experience, and you're trying to jump in, you have at least made the decision that you want to consume more of this information and jump into the space. I would, to those people that are below entry level, or in the learning phase, pay attention, ask questions, and take every opportunity to talk to people that are in operations, or asset management, and can just learn and absorb and shadow any information or any experience that you can glean from that. If you've been around owning and operating deals, you probably know a little more than you think you do. Probably a whole other series of education on that we could go into, as far as the financials, or income, expenses, owner, below the line stuff. We could go into kind of the different KPIs, and maybe we want to touch on that here in a minute. But there is kind of like, operations 101 or asset management 101, kind of that um, the first book in the series, of which is just the facts, just the entry level information. So achieving that for yourself, I mean, obviously, this channel and this network are a huge resource. But that type of information is in a book. That type of information is online. I mean, just educating yourself on the basics. Marketing, leasing, financials, reporting. Reporting is another thing. I don't even think I've said the word reporting yet. I mean, that's another, depending on the agreed scope, in this asset manager, between all the factions and all the stakeholders, there's a whole reporting suite that's due to ownership, due to investors. So yeah, I think just involving yourself, if you've already kind of stepped through the threshold of wanting to be involved in this, I think any opportunity you have to gain more knowledge, gain more experience, even if it's just conversations, forums like this, if you have the opportunity to be on ownership calls, certainly if you have the opportunity to actually step into managing actual assets, whether it's jumping in with both feet into the deep end, or whether it's like, the opportunity to kind of shadow somebody, or kind of wade into shallower waters, I would certainly take those opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a question from Taylor. He's asking, what are some major issues that you have seen in asset management and were able to turn around?
Oh man, I got stories.
I mean,
Snakes. I
you
have
lived through
snake
COVID
stories.
as an asset manager, right?
Yeah, COVID was a whole. I think I blocked that out. What's a good kind of short and sweet palatable one? I think it's just when something's not going well, I mean, we could go 19 directions with this question, but I think I want to hammer home something I said earlier, and certainly I can go deeper. But when things aren't going well, quickly identifying that something's wrong, whether it's an expense performance, whether it's people, um, whether it's just market conditions affecting rents, or the pro forma, or the business plan, or whatever. I think the quicker that can be identified, if you're aware of it and you've brought it to ownership's attention, and you're forcing conversations with all the appropriate stakeholders immediately, you're going to be able to identify course corrective measures quickly. You're going to be able to put resources in place to course correct quickly. Whereas if you're just sitting around with your feet on your desk playing Angry Birds, and it's 6 months before you realize you have a problem that you were supposed to be watching, you have a problem and you were supposed to be watching. Um, so again, I could give you snake stories and COVID stories, and maybe there's like an after hours we could do for that. But I think just the ability to fail quickly, and to quickly identify the next thing, that's the next snake in the grass that's going to bite you, to keep my metaphor going. That's also another learned skill. Some people are good at that. I mean, some people are naturally analytical, and know what's coming around the next corner. But if you're not one of those people, you need to learn how to be one of those people, and almost predict what the next thing is going to be, so you can triage it, and fix it quickly. Certainly see it and fix it quickly.
I'll give an example. We have a property that actually the one that you managed during COVID. Going into that, you foresaw that there were going to be issues with the AC units because of the type of AC units that were there. And when you were managing it, you saw what the issues were, so you were able to let us know during our due diligence, right? Hey, we need to look at these things. We need to take, the AC systems, and this is what happened before, and this is probably what's going to continue to happen. So we need to look at that in advance and remedy that now, even before we've taken ownership of that property. And because of your foresight, because of that knowledge that you were able to see these types of issues happening, we were able to create a reserve account. We were able to bring in the type of maintenance staff, and it's like chess, right? We're playing 17 steps ahead, so that we can already take care of the issues that we foresee happening. And that's what and I believe that's what a good asset manager does as well, right? You're able to look and to foresee those issues coming up and say, hey, these are the things that we need to take care of. These are the things that we need to prepare for. And this is how I see us preparing for it.
Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think just the ability, and two, I think you got me thinking, like, even the ability to uh I was mentioning identifying problems, and forcing quick resolution trajectories, but even just the ability to manage expectations. That's something else that we've said a couple times, but I'll bring it back here. You The ability to have a difficult conversation with an owner, is a learned skill. I mean, maybe you're good at it. I certainly was not when I first started. But it's kind of one of those things where the sooner you get bad news in front of stakeholders, and it's in one of those things where you don't just come with bad news. You come with bad news and three solution options.
Right.
That's a um, I can't tell you how many owners, in my career, have taken, it's one of those meetings. Everybody's anxious. It's bad news. Sometimes it's really bad news, but if it's presented, professionally, with tact, but also with, okay, here's what we should do, or here's my recommendation. Here's what I think we should do. Here's why. It's y'all's money and it's y'all's property. But if it was me, I would do it this way. I can't tell you how many times I've had owners leave those conversations and go, you know what? It sucks to be where we are, but I appreciate you coming to us like you did. I appreciate you giving us options. I appreciate you articulating the implications of those options, and that's I think even just the ability and the maturity to speak to powerful, wealthy people, in a way that's kind of frank, but also outlines their options, because you're managing their money. That's what you're doing. You're a steward of the asset and of folks' money. And if you take that responsibility seriously, then it's not a scary or negative thing to deliver bad news. You're being a steward. You're helping you're helping everyone, but including the stakeholders specifically by saying, hey, listen, we have a problem, but here's what we're going to do to fix it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to start asking them. Software, technology, what is there anything specific, anything special that you as an asset manager work with your team to help asset manage and work through items?
Honestly, no. Property management software and reporting software to me is kind of, I don't have a favorite. I've worked with multiple. I mean, I think there are some that are better than others. I think you get what you pay for. But I think that's fine too. I mean, we have some properties that are active in our portfolio, and we don't Entrada is an example of one that's um, just all the bells and whistles, but it's very, very, very expensive. If you're a massive platform, a massive operations platform, it makes sense for you to have. And there's a couple too. I probably shouldn't have said a specific name. That's just the one I have the most experience with, because they're all good platforms. But there are platforms that are just designed to be nuts and bolts. There are platforms that are cost effective for smaller operations, and they give you the financial information. There's just a little more manual input required. It's a little less bells and whistles. So that's more advice is probably where I'm going with this, is don't buy a Ferrari of an operating platform if your budget and your where you are in your business growth cycle is not ready for an outsized expense on a toy like a Ferrari of an operating platform. You'll get there one day.
Mm-hmm.
Go get
Great.
the stuff that works, inside a budget, and we can dream about Ferraris together one day.
Right. We've got a question here from Juan. What's the difference between an asset manager and a regional manager?
Yeah, it's a good question. Regional is just a level of leadership, typically in a management operation. So typically, you have property level managers. Then you have some sort of leadership structure, whether that's a regional, a super regional, a vice regional of east, west, south, and north. I mean, every organization tends to kind of have their hierarchy. And so a regional just means you probably have a portfolio. It probably covers multiple states or an area of the country. So that's a little more of a rung in the ladder of a management company hierarchy, the regional. Whereas an asset manager is just a general term for somebody who's um, in charge of, kind of like I've said, who's in charge of from the ownership side typically. There are some management companies that also have asset management, but that's because they do their own management, but they also are owners. And don't let me confuse you. Typically, the asset manager is on the ownership side, and is the liaison between ownership, equity, debt, and the property management team on the boots on the ground. Whereas a regional is again just a part of the hierarchy of leadership in a management operation organization.
Awesome. Awesome. And anybody else have any questions? I know we're coming up on the hour here. Let me ask you, while some people are asking questions, are there any challenges facing the asset management industry? Anything coming up, or is it kind of just a status quo, and things are just running as they should? And how many, or what, here's a better question. How many asset managers should ownership hire?
I think it depends on the plan, the business plan. If you have one or two high horsepower folks, you may can cover a lot more. It just depends how much coverage you have, how much bandwidth they have, how much they're involved in other things. If you have an asset manager whose sole focus is nothing but going between you and your management company and your moderate sized portfolio, one person may do the job. But if you task your asset management managers with underwriting and portfolio operations and dispossession stuff, if it just depends. If you spread them out too thin, then that's probably for the owner to decide as a function of bandwidth and efficacy.
Got it. Awesome. Matthew's
Good
asking,
question.
what are your top 3 KPIs that you would track and focus on?
It's a great question. Um, it's probably hard to give it like a top three or most important, but because they're all important, but they're all connected, right? Marketing is connected to leasing, is connected to occupancy, is connected to financial, the financial performance and that whole thing too. Maybe I'll answer this by saying one that's typically overlooked. How about that? One that some people don't necessarily understand or give full attention to is reputation management, is customer service. Is
Mm.
kind of the not that people don't believe in it, not that people aren't aware of it, because we're all consumers. We all go to restaurants, we all go to retail. We're all part of the reputation management, customer service cycle out there in the world, but it's often overlooked in multifamily. The best operations that I have been associated with have the biggest emphasis on high level customer service and high level reputation management. They have active programs on site where they're actively letting residents know that they're valued and they're taken care of, and they're soliciting feedback, and work orders are a priority, and fixing issues at the highest level are a priority. If a tenant has an issue, they can get to a manager, and it's resolved with with grace and professionalism and things like that. The organizations that prioritize that type of stuff, and even now too, online, when I say reputation management is different than customer service. Customer service is a manager helping a tenant, a maintenance supervisor going the extra mile to fix a work order and make sure that tenant understands how to operate the appliance or whatever it may be. But when I say reputation management, I take it a step further, and that's active online campaigns. That's active social media campaigns. That's there's a third party platforms out there that support high level reputation management with that they can they can kick bad reviews up to you and help you write replies, and there's just all these different ways that organizations can focus on that and truly try to move the needle in those efforts with customer service and reputation management. And what it does is it creates renewals, it creates buzz, it makes you a desirable place in the market. You get a reputation for being the place to live, not only for your product or your location, but because it's quality of life. I mean, think about y'all individually. What's a restaurant near your home that you go to? Maybe it's okay food, but you don't ever have a problem there. Or if the one time you did have a problem, some nice lady came over and she said, "Hey, that's not who we are. I want to fix it. I value you as a customer. Let me take that off your bill, or let me get you some fries or something." I mean, those are the types of things that truly impact the bottom line, that truly move the needle when it comes to financial performance, renewals, rent growth, that type of thing. So that's how I'll answer that. Is kind of the not the forgotten, but the certainly seldom focused on reputation management and high level customer service.
Right. Awesome, man. Is it best for the owner, and this is Kenneth, he's asking, is it best for the owner to be the asset manager or hire someone to be the asset manager?
I think it depends on you. It depends on your operation, and I'm trying not to ever cop out on the it depends. But if this owner in your example, or you, if you're asking for a friend, solves for that in an efficient and effective and professional way, then congratulations, you have efficiencies in your operation. Maybe kind of devil's advocate in that same scenario, some people like the asset management individual because it's a check and a balance. It's literally even if an owner or a management company or an equity partner, whoever is actually involved in asset management and other deals, or that's their background. Sometimes they just like having an autonomous individual who is a check and a balance, a different voice, somebody who's going to hold so and so accountable, or there's reasons why you and your business, you and your partnership may choose to take it on in-house because it's efficient and you're capable, or there's reasons why you may choose to add that piece, that layer to your armor.
And if I may add a little bit more color to that, when we get into multifamily, it's all about that passive income, right? Putting people in place. So, as a GP, right, or an LP, probably as a GP, you want to kind of be as as passive as possible as a GP, right? Why add another level of work for yourselves, right? And if the budget holds where you can hire an asset manager, in my opinion, I would say hire an asset manager, because what is your highest and best role as a general partner? Is it managing the manager, or is it going out and managing the partnership, your investors, and finding another project to move your business further along, right? So you want to have those kinds of thoughts as well when you're thinking about that. Um, where does the asset manager what? Where does the asset manager make his or her money? Is it a fee or is it performance based?
So it depends. Sorry, I cracked myself up. It depends on your structure. If you're a small shop and that individual is part of your team, then I'm sure you have a compensation structure, whether it's partnership percentages or whether it's just it's a salary structure. I mean, typically, as Nichon mentioned a second ago, typically there is an asset management fee budgeted in the deal. It's very hard to have a separate autonomous discrete asset management function in your deal if it's not budgeted. I mean, it's if the deal can't pay for it, you probably don't have it, or you solve for it, inside the partnership or elsewhere. Now how that individual gets paid is like how any of us get paid. It's based on experience, it's based on aptitude, it's based on performance, and it's based on your deal. Whether I'm an employee, whether I'm a contract, whether I'm a third party contract, just like the management team is a third party contract, or whether I'm actually part of the partnership, in some regard. It's all are available, all are possible, and it really just depends how you structure your business. And you get what you
And
pay
if I
for too, right? I mean, sorry, just real quick. I mean, if you just want some an entry level analyst, I mean, that's great. But there's a spot for that too. If you're budget conscious and you just need somebody who is learning and growing and will be great one day, maybe that's your budget and maybe that's your chosen path, or you have somebody who's partner level and that's just their expertise and that's your path too. It's really up to you and your business plan.
Yes, and just to add a little bit to that as well, when I got started in the industry and I was, we were doing our pro formas and running and asking our SEC attorneys and things of that nature, they always told us to budget for an asset manager. Even if we, as the GP, were going to do the asset management and we weren't going to take a fee for whatever reason and whatnot, to always budget into your underwriting an asset management fee, just in case one day you do decide to have an asset manager, that line item is already included in there and it's not detracting from the bottom line. It's already in there. And Biff, what are some industry standards on fees? Is it 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 1 to 3? Where have you seen the asset management fee, percentage wise fall in? And is it part of the NOI? Is it part of the gross effective income? Where does that fee come from?
Typically, I guess probably 1 to 3% is probably a range, and I know that's a wide range. So maybe two is the average, but it depends on structure. That's why I kind of hedge a little bit. If you're truly third party and it's truly a part of the budget, and the only compensation for the asset management is that line item in the budget, that's invoiced against that number monthly or quarterly, then yeah, probably 2 or 3% is fair. It just depends. It depends if I'm working for an entire portfolio, maybe I don't need a full 3% on one deal because I'm aggregating, the aggregate of all of the portfolio with an owner, right? I don't need one deal in order to make an overly impactful compensation that hurts the deal because I've got other compensation from that owner. Um, Sometimes it's just a dollar amount minimum. I mean, management contract, property management contracts are like that too. Sometimes they have a percentage, but they also have a dollar amount minimum, just so they know they're getting a base, but then they have a performance kicker. So I mean, I hate to answer this with it
Right.
depends, but it depends on the structure, it depends on scale, economies of scale. If this is a one-off and your only contract, yeah, 2% or 3% is probably fair. But if you have multiple touch points with a group or in multiple kind of revenue streams, you can take a little less and not impact the deal negatively, but you're still making your appropriate compensation.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question from Kenneth. Is the asset manager under a contractual agreement? Is it a legal agreement? Is it a contract?
It should be. I mean, you should have an asset management contract, just like you have a property management PMA, a property management agreement, or property management contract, just like you have a PSA, a purchase and sale agreement. I mean, there's, can you get by with a handshake agreement and work, make beautiful music with an ownership group for 20 years? Sure. Are you max protected if you don't have a contract that articulates what you will do, what you won't do, what's expected of you, what's expected of ownership, what your fee structure is? Yeah, you should always protect yourself with an asset management contract.
All right, last question, Biff, and then we're going to let you go. We're going to let everybody go. And thank you guys for being here. And Biff, thank you again for taking time out here. When interviewing an asset manager to hire, what are some of the key things that we should be looking at?
That's another great question. Experience, of course. I mean, that's a given, and I would really drill into that. How would you handle this situation? What was a difficult situation that you corrected? All those kind of like, tell me about your experience type questions, because it matters. Again, you may your business plan may be looking for a more entry level analyst, warm body to be in between the ownership, the capital structure, and the property structure. But if you're looking for any kind of experience, you should scrutinize the experience. I think too is back to something I've said a couple times, is you should find a personality match. This individual is going to be your mouthpiece and speaking for you in a lot of ways, and guiding your business plan on your asset. You better jive with them. You better like how they speak to you. You better want to work with them. Honestly, though, I guess maybe you're the type of owner that you need somebody to that doesn't jive with you. Maybe you need somebody who is different than your personality and can speak to you a certain kind of way to get you to listen. I mean, I think it's personal. I think you as an owner have to decide if you would work better with somebody who speaks your language and understands you and has the experience, or maybe you need somebody who will oppose you, respectfully, and tell you how it is, and deliver the bad news in a way that gets your attention. Sometimes maybe that's what you need as an owner. Maybe that's the decision you make as an owner.
Awesome. Last questions before we head out, folks. Biff, thank you so much. And by the way, Biff is a partner of ours, right? Biff and I, we partner on deals together. We've done deals. He asset manages our portfolio that we have together. However, for those of you who are buying multifamily, you're going out there, you're looking for an asset manager. Biff, what's the bet? Biff does have his company that he works with as an asset manager. How can people get a hold of you, Biff, so that they could hire you and bring you on as part of their team?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Nitsan. Thanks for the opportunity. It was such a pleasure to talk to everyone here. I will drop my email. Burton Asset Management is our asset management firm. Burton Asset Management. I'll drop that here. But yeah, feel free to, and obviously you're all connected to Nitsan, so you're never too far away from getting directly in. Oh, nice, you beat me to it. Sweet. So I'll drop my email. But yeah, I would love to talk. I mean, I love talking to folks. If you just need some advice, we're all connected here. We're all, in the same community. I believe that these relationships should be symbiotic. If I help you on something, even if it's just an opinion or advice or color one day, and 2 years later, we're going to shake hands at some event somewhere and actually be able to help each other on something too. So I'm a firm believer in just creating relationships and talking to folks and being helpful where I can. And I think if we all operate that way, we're all going to be able to help each other someday, somehow.
Yeah, if you guys want the Biff's contact info, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. This is recorded, and we will be sending it out to you. And here, Biff just dropped his email, bramsey@burtoncapitalgroup.com. Last thing I'm going to be sharing my screen here for those of you guys that came in a little bit later. Next week, we're going to talk about how to find the right market what's a great market to invest in, how to find those markets. This is the QR code. We're also going to be talking about a hot market that I'm very bullish on right now and that we're going after. So here's the QR code to register for next week's webinar as well. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, here on Zoom. So go ahead and click that. It'll take you to the registration. Register. That way, if you can't show up, you will still get the recording of the webinar itself. So there it is. I'm going to give you another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Let's see. We got any more questions? Everybody's saying thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There's my phone number right there down below as well. Feel free to text me, and we'll see you guys next week. Biff, thanks so much for being on the call and for sharing your knowledge, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you all so much. Cheers.
All right. Take care, guys.